SB 360 requires clergy to report suspected child abuse or neglect, even if they acquire the knowledge or suspicion during a penitential communication. Clergy are already mandated child abuse and neglect reporters in California. This bill would level the playing field by holding them to the same standard as the other 45 mandated reporters listed in statute. As mandated child abuse and neglect reporters, doctors, psychiatrists, therapists, and others have to break client privilege and report suspected child abuse and neglect without exception. But under existing law, clergy can lawfully ignore suspected child abuse and neglect if they acquire the knowledge during a conversation that is intended to be confidential. Child abuse is clearly still a pressing issue in faith institutions.
Hello, brothers and sisters. Cameron here. I hope that your week is going well. Last week, something amazing happened. For the first time in California, if you haven't seen my vlog from last week covering SB 360 and some of our work, I'll have that linked in the description. And please, please stay till the end of this video to find out how you can help and get involved in all of the activism and legal work that we're doing to change the face of the United States of America. So the past year and a half, I've been working with two activist groups on how we can make a dent in religion here in America. A lot of us are ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-Mormons, ex-religious groups or members or cult survivors, law students, activists, or just humanitarians who want to do the right thing. We sat down for a long time and thought of the, excommunication, disfellowshipping, the shunning, the blood issue, the issue of child abuse, which is just rampant in all of these culty religions. We were sitting around at the end of the day many times scratching our head going, just how the fuck is this shit even legal in the United States? Now, as an abuse survivor myself, we started looking at cases of child abuse. I started going to meetups, just looking for closure and to meet other survivors that were just like me. And I started meeting them, going to these meetup groups, and then I started putting two and two together, like, okay, so-and-so needs to speak to so-and-so, they need to meet and shake hands and have dinner, and I started doing that, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, I'm a part of these two activist groups that are pushing for religious reform in America. And now we're writing a bill with the CCLA and the support of SCARS, and we found a Senator Jerry Hill to author the bill, so that way we can introduce the bill. SB 360, if you haven't heard about it, is a bill that levels the playing field for religions to be on the same page as all the other mandatory reporters in America, specifically handling child abuse or sexual abuse or abuse victims. This is pretty common knowledge at this point that many, many different culty religions hide child abuse. There's the Catholics that are all over hiding this. They're in the news consistently. There's many, many groups known for polygamy with underage girls. The Mormons, how they started, the guy was pimping out younger girls. There's so much, but not a lot goes into Jehovah's Witnesses. It is very well kept secret, although if you Google it, you'll find some cases. On the flip side of that, if you are in one of these cults, one of these organized religion cults, you are completely unaware of this. I bet if you're a Catholic, I know if you're Mormon and JW, and depending on which cult it is, they do such a good job of hiding this and telling that, because it's very black and white, they're narcissistic groups where they say that our way is the only way of thinking, ours is the best way of thinking, and the more people that become like us are going to make it in the new system, the new world, the new heaven, whatever it is. Get their members, especially someone like me who was born in, or if you're recruited at an early age or a later age, you're brainwashed. They tell you not to listen to outside news because it's them versus Satan the devil, and Satan the devil controls everything. Scientology has a different word for it, but everyone's after them. It's black and white. There's no gray in color. And they're told to look at these as lies, these news reports as lies, and to not trust politics or get involved in politics. It's all attacks from Satan, the devil. Now, clergy are mandated reporters. That's true. But they've been getting away with it for years. By mislabeling a victim going to ask for help as a confession, they're covering it up, and their abuse of these laws simply does not apply. And they've created a little exemption for themselves called Clergy Penitent Privilege. Clergy Penitent Privilege. This probably goes this way on the camera. First off, this is a disgusting misuse of the law and abuse towards children, men and women all over the United States, myself included, so fuck you and your whole family. Second, after all of this hard work, we've introduced a bill to the Senate. We did the language. We found a senator to author the bill, Senator Jerry Hill, who picked it up. Thank you, Jerry. I testified with my own story at the Capitol of California with 30 other people, plus the 2 activist groups there, all in support, and other groups in support of religious reform. Some heavy hitters were there. CCLA, filled with EXJWs, ex-Mormons, activists, law students. Candace Conti, if you haven't seen her case, you can Google her name. She's the first Jehovah's Witness to win a case against the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Watchtower Bible Tract Society. Roger and Karen Bentley from SCARS, another group I'm a part of. I love them. I actually met them through meetups and then had SCARS meet CCLA over dinner one night. I remember some of the best burgers that we had. If you like cheeseburgers and you're ever in Northern California, let me know. I'll give you some good recommendations. That shit was wild. Star Paul, Zeb Leatherman, the guy famous for crashing all of the Kingdom Halls. He's actually like a really nice guy, very shy and timid, and a loner. But I was not having that when I met him. I was like, Zeb, because he sat on the other side of the room the first time I met him, like pulled him over, like, you're sitting with us. So, hey Zeb, what's up? A ton of other survivors and some people who hadn't even come forward yet confessed that day for the first time. So my heart goes out to you. If you're watching this and you know who I'm talking about, because I'm not mentioning your name, I love you, you're amazing. I'm proud to have been there and stand up for what's right, to be a part of this bigger thing. A lot of people who talk about our problems and our abuse, depression, anxiety, and sadness come usually the next day, and for me it hits me for several weeks. I've had a lot of help recently with therapy and having a group surrounding in a group setting. We've been texting each other back, helping each other through it, but I want to have a video that comes out afterwards a little bit sooner that'll probably be going straight to Patreon, aftercare for when you do talk about it. There's steps that you need to take care of yourself to be a better person and to get through and push through the depression. Please note, I am not a licensed therapist, but these are things that I've learned from talking to therapists and doing a lot of self-help and reading a lot of self-help books and applying it to my life. It does work if you apply it. It's such a beautiful day. Why don't we go outside for a second? Oh my God, it is springtime in California, and I really wish that our weather stayed this perfect. It is a nice chill, like 60 to 75 degrees out. There's a cool breeze going through that's beautiful everywhere. There's green and sunlight coming through. There's clouds in the sky. Nothing else makes me just happy to be alive. It was really chilling getting up there on stage and testifying a very, very brief version of my stories growing up as a Jehovah's Witness and the abuse that was involved. I'd only talked about it once before on my channel. It's a video that you may or may not have seen, where I went back home looking just to see my mom for a second at the Assembly Hall for the Memorial of Jehovah's Witnesses last year. And by the way, if you want me to go again this year, leave a comment. I do actually plan on going again with a much deeper purpose. Ever since briefly talking about it, has been a depressive, progressive journey from talking about it and then dealing with all the things that I hadn't dealt with in a very long time. Despite the depression that comes after talking about some of those things, it was worth it, especially if it comes at the cost of the greater good.
Last Thursday, a priest was arrested in the Bay Area on suspicion of 30 counts of child sex abuse in 2016 and 2017. And on Friday, Pope Francis issued a decree making it mandatory for Vatican city officials to immediately report abuse allegations, the first of its kind in the Catholic Church. California would not be trailblazing with this measure. Connecticut, Indiana, Mississippi, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New Jersey, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Rhode Island, Tennessee, Texas, and West Virginia already have similar statutes. They operate under the same Constitution and the same Bill of Rights that we do, and we have found no legal challenges to these statutes in those states. It is time for California to put children first. I do have witnesses, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Do we have witnesses in support?
Hi, my name's Kameron Torres. I'm an abuse survivor. It all started with my mother. She was born and raised in San Francisco into an abusive family background. And in her early 20s, she was recruited into the Jehovah's Witnesses around the same time that she became pregnant with me. They convinced her that Satan, the devil, controlled the entire world, including her family. So she ran away with me, where I was born and raised in a small town with nothing but Jehovah's Witnesses. And, naturally, I was raised in a God-fearing family, so I loved her and I wanted to do what was right in God's eyes. At a really early age, at around 6, I was taken advantage of by a man in the congregation. He was really, really close to the family, so they trusted him. But my mother suspected something was up, something was wrong, so she asked me and then went to the elders. When I confirmed that, they told her, it's in God's hands now. Don't speak about it. We'll look into it and we'll do something about it. And they didn't want us to talk about it for fear of, again, Satan, the devil, trying to attack the one true religion. So nothing happened. And a few years later, it happened again with a different man. And they said the same thing. Don't speak about it. It's in God's hands, and they'll take care of it. So these two men I had to grow up with, staring at as abusers. And they're still loose in the congregations to this day with higher positions, and they're surrounded by children all the time. So it was up until about 2 years ago that I realized that I had been lied to my entire life. I found out that I grew up in a cult, and that they were hiding thousands of sex abuse cases. This is a public safety issue for all religions, governments, businesses. Clergy Penitent Privilege has been around for the last 100+ years. This will cost the state less money for having to rehabilitate people who turn to drugs and alcohol and other uses when they don't have an outlet. SB 360 aims to end this clergy privilege and have mandatory reporting. I think it's time that the universe is telling us to protect our children.
Thank you.
So after testifying, next we had the advocacy groups and the survivors coming and doing a Me Too kind of fashion. If you've never been to a Capitol, this is a very common thing when a bill is introduced. People who support it come and say, I support this bill.
Before I ask for the witnesses in opposition, I want to thank the survivors very, very much for speaking. And I want to just applaud your courage. It is very difficult. And I think we all know that abuse of children happens because either the child is in a setting where they feel they cannot tell, or they do tell and it's never revealed. It allows the abuse to go on. So we applaud your courage. And I am an abuse survivor. Years of abuse. I was not able to speak about it publicly until about 6 years ago. So it is very, very difficult, and I really applaud you. And now we will take the witnesses in opposition.
An attorney, Kevin Snyder, with the Pacific Justice Institute, representing the Eastern Orthodox Church, Episcopal, Lutheran, Presbyterian, American Baptist, Methodist, Latter-day Saints, Mormons, Pentecostal, and the Church of Scientology, got up on stage and opposed the bill. The balding man's argument was that it would put confession, the free exercise of religion, and break a millennial-old tradition of trust. He urged the board to vote no.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, good morning. My name is Kevin Snyder with Pacific Justice Institute, a Center for Public Policy, where I serve as Chief Counsel. In my capacity as an attorney, much of my practice is focused on advising religious institutions and their clergy. The bill before you seeks to impose criminal penalties of 6 months in jail on a member of the clergy for refusing to break the seal of confession. Private religious counsel, typically referred to as confession, is a millennia-old religious practice. It is common knowledge that the practice is a sacrament of the Catholic Church, but is also part of religious practices of the Eastern Orthodox Church. In the Protestant Reformed tradition, it is found in the Lutheran, Episcopal, and Presbyterian churches. Other churches also have confession as part of their religious practices, such as the American Baptist, Methodist, Latter-day Saints, and Church of Scientology. Anecdotally, in providing legal counsel to pastors, I would estimate that half of evangelical, fundamentalist, and Pentecostal churches maintain strict confidences such that they will not report confession of crimes, nor will they testify in court if subpoenaed. By removing the clergy penitent privilege, such requires clergy to sail between the Scylla and the Charybdis. They must choose between criminal liability or spiritual peril. Failure to immediately bring in the police subjects ministers to prosecution and jail, but disclosing violates religious practices in a sacred trust. The Bill of Rights in our Constitution is a secular decalogue, if you will. It is a list of do's and don'ts directed at the government. Passage of the bill before you would break the first clause of the first commandment, if you will. The religion clause provides that no law can be passed that prohibits the free exercise of religion. Placing clergy in a position such that they will be gored by one or the other of two horns of a dilemma is precisely what the First Amendment forbids. Just as Congress rightly exempted clergy from the military draft, so too this body should have the prudence to not conscript ministers into the ranks of law enforcement. There are well over 40 categories of individuals that have been placed at the service of the state in relation to reporting suspicions of child abuse and neglect. The church should not be used as a tool of the state. Madam Chairman, thank you for your deliberation on this matter and for your service to the community, and I urge the members to vote nay.
Then Andrew Rivas, the executive board director of the Catholic Conference here in Northern California, also showed up out of nowhere to show opposition to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Andrew Rivas, and I'm the Executive Director of the California Catholic Conference, and I am here to express the Bishop's opposition to the bill and offer myself as a person to talk to as to why we would be opposed to the bill. And let me first start by saying it is a self-defeating bill, and that's one of the reasons why we oppose it.
He said it was a self-defeating bill. There was so much dead silence in the room after he said that, after both of those guys' statements, you could literally hear a cockroach taking a shit from the back of the room. Then Senator Hannah-Beth Jackson and Senator Nancy Skinner proceeded to tear apart their arguments, their amendment right arguments, and their logical approach to the opposition's lack of logic.
To the attorney who's here, as I had mentioned earlier with respect to the Second Amendment, we have no amendments that are unrestricted and unqualified. And certainly the First Amendment, in terms of freedom of religion, we do have laws prohibiting bigamy. And those are contrary to certain religious groups. So there is no amendment that is without some restriction. And I'm sure you are aware of that. The fact of the matter is that we have had a plague, an epidemic of excuses and claims of religion, which have allowed pedophiles and abusers to exist in this country and this world unfettered for far too long. And the notion that talking about at the service of the state, I would submit that it is immoral and against God's will for people to abuse children. And I think it is the responsibility of the state to do everything it can to make sure that does not continue. I think we would be remiss in our responsibilities to accept any claim that religion and man-made religion supersedes the protections that we owe children in particular in our society. So I would suggest that your First Amendment argument is outdated. As was mentioned, there are many other states where this has taken place without repercussion. That the state, the people do have the right to limit certain practices that are believed to be inappropriate, immoral, and certainly to give a pass because someone goes in and confesses behavior that is offensive to mankind and probably to God, but I'll let God make that decision. I don't pretend to know whether whether this is something that would be acceptable, but I suspect, given the notion of good and evil, and God being good and the devil being evil, that if we were going to have that religious discussion, that's where I think we would land on God's side and the side of good. But we are a society. We are governed by laws. We are governed by what we believe to be what is morally correct and what is in the best interests of our communities and society. And I would submit, accepting and condoning, allowing this kind of behavior to continue on a claim of religious freedom, I think is anathema to everything we hold dear. And I hope it is anathema to everything we hold dear. So, First Amendment, not unlimited. Second Amendment, not unlimited. We are a society of human beings, and we try to protect ourselves and each other as best we can. So I want to thank you for bringing this bill, and I want to thank the witnesses for coming forward. I'm sure this was not an easy thing to do, but this has got to stop. And with that, I would move the bill.
These two women are beautiful human beings. If you're watching, thank you. I have yet to actually meet you and shake your hands and give you a hug.
Other comments or questions on part of my colleagues? I have a few. I referenced that this silence is what has allowed children to continue to be abused, but I really should not have used children alone. It has allowed anyone, adults, children, any age, to continue to be abused. And we see that in powerful institutions that, unfortunately, not all, but many are, I don't want to say necessarily designed such, but within those powerful institutions, if there are abusers, that the entities protect themselves. So we see it again and again and again, whether it was in the entertainment industry or different faith-based groups or scouts organizations or so many things, employers, workplaces, where until we have had laws to make it safe for people affected to report without retaliation and without consequence, minimal consequence to themselves, that the silence continues the abuse. And we see it again and again and again in any number of institutions, and we've taken many, many actions, whether it's changing workplace rules or a whole host of other laws in order to protect abusers and to make it as safe as possible for them to come forward. What this bill does is put the religious folks on the level playing field with all other mandatory reporters, which I think is absolutely appropriate at this time, given what we know about the prevalence of abuse within these religious settings. And that for us not to would be putting our head in the sand. So I support the bill and appreciate, Senator Hill, that you brought it back. And unless there's any other comments or questions, and the last thing I would say to those of you who have spoken maybe for the first time, it does get easier to speak about it. But it never, the experiences that you experience, they never go away. You don't forget. But it does get easier to speak about it, and it's healing. May we have a roll call?
There will be a link in the description to a website with a letter that you can write to the senators with emails and verbiage already in there. You just cut, copy, and paste what you need to put in there with all the links and information in a PDF and a Word document for you to fill out. There's a list of people in the email and the PDF that you can contact. This is huge in showing your voice and support. Also, come support me on Patreon. I'm actually uploading a huge portion of this video and saving it for Patreon so people have some exclusive content on there, some behind the scenes of what was happening. You'll see a little bit of that here, but more in depth and more, and including, we were actually very lucky to record when one of the director of CCLA came in and told us that the bill passed the introduction, where we go crazy.
I didn't think it was going to go as well as I mean, in terms of the witnesses in the audience, but you brought it home.
I am standing right in front of the Sacramento, California Capitol. This is where both of the attorneys, grown men next to me, started slurring their words and shaking. All of this hard work, blood, sweat, and tears from everyone on all sides is not paid. None of us are paid. We're activists that are doing it because it's the right thing, and we all have been scarred by this, and we're afraid of future going forward without us doing something about it. So if you can support this on Patreon, I'm putting the full-length version of this as well as the entire trial, plus the commentary that you don't get to see on YouTube, privately on Patreon exclusively, so you can check out. Plus, I'm going to be hosting a AMA or Ask Me Anything, so you can find out more, find out how you can get involved, ask questions about anything that you want to hear about. I truly believe with my whole heart that what we're doing will not only change the face of the United States, but change the face of culty religions and how they operate. Very interesting to see when this is written into law and it starts jumping over state to state, taking over the United States, what the Watchtower and all of the leaders of these cults have to say when this probably new light is going to pour in. That's what I'm seeing. And oh, God's speaking to us now. Let's protect our children all of a sudden 100 years later after existing. Until next time, brothers and sisters, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you can get all of the updates. We'll be constantly uploading content here and Patreon. Leave a comment. And make sure you follow me on Instagram at Kameron Fader. Please, please share this video. And if you can't donate to Patreon, or if you're stuck in a cult, that's totally okay. I appreciate your support. Leave some love down below. Follow on Insta for some updates, because you can still write a letter. And until next time, brothers and sisters, I will see you